Roxy Sexy.
And good early evening, Tam Tam.
Did your hair grow?
Yes. Oh my God. This is
It grew overnight.
Isn't it weird? Another friend commented to me about that too. She was like, your hair was short like 2 seconds ago.
No,
and
it
now
was 2 seconds ago. It was like under your ears. What are you taking? What supplements? Do tell.
Oh, yes. Okay. So here's actually, you know what I've started, which I thought I was going in.
Having sex with David.
Screaming. That too. But I was going in kicking and screaming, but I think it's actually helped sleep, which this might be interesting for you, is Whole 30. Have you heard of Whole 30?
Oh, the Whole 30? Is that why you're looking so spiffy?
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, I hope so, because it's not easy, you know? I mean, I had to take out a bunch of
interesting,
stuff.
like, about the diets and stuff. Like, do you feel like Whole 30 is a fad, or do you feel like it's something that you can continue throughout most of your life, or is it just for a short period of time?
See, I feel like it's a short period of time, because in the past I've used it to reset when I felt a little unhealthy, or I feel like just not in my body like normal. I used it in the past to reset. So I thought, hey, I'm going to try it again, see how long it lasts. Like, it may or may not last, you know, a month, 2 months, however long. But I wanted to try something a little drastic just to start resetting my body. Do you know what I mean? Because of the sleep issues and everything else.
I feel like it's weird because, and we're going to talk to our next guest about this and body issues, and especially for females. But like for me right now, I'm probably the heaviest I've actually been in my relationship with Sean, bar having a kid. So like, you know, the first year after having a child, I gave myself like the leeway and the understanding that, you know, for that first year, it's like your body it's been completely through war, right? So it takes time for it to come back into the right spot. I mean, my intestines are taken out on the table with the C-section. They packed them in, I think, a little bit the wrong way, because I'm like, this intestine is kind of going left when it should go right. That's beside the point. I've given myself leeway to like actually get back into shape. And shape isn't from me like fat or having cellulite. I feel like we should really be accepting those imperfections. But for me, it's just feeling heavy in my own body and just carrying weight around for me that isn't specific with my body type. And I feel like I'm having like a plateau. I can't lose weight. And I don't know if it's an estrogen dominance thing, or if it's a stress thing, or it's my cortisol, because they say when your cortisol levels go too high, then you can't lose belly fat. But I'm finding myself gaining weight and eating the same amount. So I don't know, maybe we should get an expert on. I've heard of this great expert who talks about like, you know, when you eat a certain amount, you actually have to, it's all about calorie deficit. So you can eat healthier, you can eat whole grains instead of, you know, simple carbs, but you're actually not going to lose weight unless you're in that calorie deficit, which is like eating less. But it's hard because my mental health is like, Tammin, don't focus on weight. You're more than just your weight. You're better than that. There's other parts to you that are meaningful. It's not just about your body. But then the other part of me is like shit, I just want to like be the shape that I used to be.
See, that's the thing. I think that that's also the thing that we hold ourselves to so much, is like, I know I look back and I'm like, oh, why can't I look like how I looked before I had kids, or how I looked 10 years ago? And I think a lot of us like hold ourselves up to that standard, and it's so unrealistic, because I think like our bodies change, you know, over time. And it's like, they change with the experiences that we've had, like having kids, or, you know, getting older, or, you know, it just various things. And I think we have to learn to like embrace it, as hard as it is.
It's hard.
It's hard. It's really hard. It's really hard. But it's one of those things where it's like, you know, I feel like some days it's better than others. There's a setback, you know, you feel like you're going forward, and then you take 2 steps back, but then it's just like day to day, right?
But then I think we need to say, and I'm going to introduce my next guest after this. I think we need to approach it as a bad brain day instead of a bad body day, right? Instead of just saying, oh, I'm having such a bad body day because I look a certain way. Maybe we're having a bad brain day, and that bad brain day is putting ourselves down because we don't feel like we look a certain way, and that equates to how we feel about ourselves as people. And so the next guest is like perfect for this subject, Roxy, because she was Miss Universe Australia 2020. Miss Universe, think about that. Miss Universe. Like the entire universe, all the things, not just the world. There's more beyond just the world. Her name is Maria, and I want to pronounce her last name properly. Thattil.
Thattil.
Okay, she's gonna close. It's so close. She's a writer, speaker, creator, and again, Miss Universe Australia 2020. So welcome and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Welcome, Maria.
You know, I was sitting here the whole time and you were speaking about this and the way that you perceive all of these things that I'm all too familiar with. And I'm just nodding. I'm like, yes, tell him. Yes, loved it. And, you know, I'm really grateful that you're holding a space for me. So thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. You won one of the biggest, obviously the biggest pageant in the world. And so my question is, if we start from the beginning, like, why pageants? Why did you decide to go down that road? Obviously, you're a stunning, beautiful woman. When did you think that was the road and the path for you?
You know, it was a decision I made in April 2019. I actually remember the month. I remember when I decided I'm going to do it. But pageants, you know, on the whole, I'll start by taking a step back. Before I was doing that, I was working in HR. So I have degrees in psychology and management. I was working in HR and on the side, posting and making content on social media around beauty and fashion, because those are my interests too. And I found it to be a really good medium to share a lot of my thoughts on things like body image, on diversity, racism. And it was just a great medium that I didn't need permission from anybody else to speak on, right? And before that, you know, I hadn't really seen anybody who looked like me or anyone that I could really relate to in mainstream media in Australia anyway, where I felt like, that's what I went through. That's what I'm going through. But look at where they are now. They're in news, they're in politics, they're in whatever. So that lack of representation sort of, I guess, affected my prospects on what I thought was possible for me. And I sought out more traditional mediums for success. I thought, I'm going to have a good corporate career. I'm going to kill it in my academic career. And then social media popped up and I thought, wow, this is a fun creative outlet, but I can say what I want to say. And then when I saw that Priya Saral, who is an Indian Australian lawyer, when I saw her win Miss Universe Australia 2019, that's where it changed any perceptions I had around what Miss Universe Australia was. Because I guess I thought I was the farthest thing from Jennifer Hawkins, don't fit that mold. And for Australia's 7-decade history, they had sent women who were, you know, they fit a certain mold, all beautiful, deserving women, but we only had 2 women of color sent in that 7-decade history. So I didn't think it was something I could do. And when Priya won, I thought, hang on a minute, maybe that could be something I can use to champion my message. So Miss Universe and pageantry, that was never the bigger goal and not something I've always wanted to do. Rather, it ended up being a platform that I wanted to capitalize on to progress my own career and further my own message. And it ended up being exactly that, because my entire campaign and my entire experience was intentional. So that was a catalyst.
You know, being that you are only the 3rd woman of color, you know, to win Miss Australia, congratulations, first of all.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And it's really admirable what you're doing with your platform of diversity and inclusion, and really, you know, opening up as many eyes as you can to that. And speaking as somebody who is also, my father is Pakistani. So I'm kind of like half, you know, Desi. So that really made me proud too, that you were, you know, representing our community and everything.
Yes, that's it.
Absolutely. But I think a lot of people may be looking in and seeing you as this like glamorous, you know, and, you know, Miss Australia can look at you and be like, oh my God, her life is so glamorous. She must have never gone through the struggle, especially between 2 different cultures of like, you know, the Australian westernized culture and then back home, you know, Indian culture. You know, I think it's, you know, something that maybe a lot of people don't realize if you have struggled in that way. What was that like for you growing up? Did you feel sort of a struggle between the 2 cultures?
Yeah. And I love that you brought this up. I do try and share that on my social media, but I so get it when you look at something at a glance. And I spoke about this yesterday. When you're in the online space, people have very voyeuristic tendencies and they love to just watch from the sidelines and consume, but they form an entire perception of somebody based on very limited information. And I do try and share that, hey, this is a highlight reel. and you don't see everything. But, you know, when I was growing up, my mum and dad immigrated to Australia back in the 90s, very early 90s, late 80s. And they were adults who had lived their whole lives in India. My dad used to be a priest. So not only were they bringing over these cultural norms, but, you know, very strict, you know, they had a very solid faith, and there were different cultural norms that they brought over with them. And I guess they struggled to assimilate to Western culture. And when I was home, I grew up in, you know, India. That was the context that they brought with them, the food, the movies, the way that they thought about the world, what I was allowed to do. I'd go to school and then I felt like I don't fit. But I equally didn't feel like I fit at home because I so badly wanted to assimilate and feel like I fit in with my friends who were Aussie. So you do feel like, okay, I am being dragged into this world by my family who are telling me, this is who you are, this is how it is. I don't care if your friends are having sleepovers, we don't do things this way, you know. And then I'm going to school and I'm like, I so desperately want to change like a chameleon just so I can fit in with all of you and feel Aussie. And from a very young age, I had that sense of, to be Australian, I need to shed my South Asian heritage. And I think a lot of third culture kids would know that your cultural identity, it's almost a crisis, and you think you have to choose, when the reality is what Australian is, it's a nationality, it's values, and it reflects the hybrid mix, because that is what this country is built on. So that was a struggle, but also the fact that my parents, you know, they moved over here and they were working class. So I grew up, but education was everything to them. And that's what it's like in South Asian communities, right? So you get your education. So mum and dad put me in a really good school. And I grew up in a socioeconomic area that was not as affluent as my peers. So not only was there misunderstandings and misperceptions about me based on race, but based on the area you grew up in. And we could talk about the neighborhood context of race and why ethnic minorities are concentrated in certain suburbs. It's a whole other thing. But the treatment of people based on socioeconomic status, based on race, that was not easy growing up. And I think a lot of that hardship is why I was so motivated and why I did so well in school. I said to myself, I'm going to work so hard that this is not my life. And I saw the sacrifices my parents had to make. I saw the way people looked at us, treated us, and I just wanted better for myself. I just didn't think I would end up in a position where I could not only make it better for myself, but potentially influencing an entire generation. And that's been the best part of it. But it was all that struggle that you asked about, that was the motivation.
It shaped you as a person, and an incredible person.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I had a different upbringing, but one that was, you know, I was a very overweight child, and I was like 200 pounds, was about 100 kilos. And the worldview was shaped through the lens of like, I wasn't enough because my body didn't fit a certain mold, right?
Yeah.
And so when we talk about pageants, the idea that we are being judged on the perfect body, and then, you know, that's part of the competition, I feel is an antiquated idea. I think that at some point, you know, just like diversity, I think there needs to be body diversity. I think we need to include like, what is perfect, right? What is the perfect body? What are we being judged on? The fact that our boobs are a certain height, our hips are a certain shape, like what is perfection, and what is, what equates to the winner, like who's making these decisions, right?
And
so my question, and what is it based on? So my question to you is, do you think we need to include more different body types? And do you think there needs to be a different way to judge what the perfect woman is?
Yeah. So there's a lot there. And I have to say, I fully agree with you. I think look, let's be honest here. And I'm going to speak very, very candidly. It is naive to say that something like Miss Universe does not have patriarchal roots. It does. And that's what it used to be. A woman walks out, it's like, oh, 9.8, great body, great this, great that. What it is evolving into is it's not about having perfect proportions or the best body. It is about how confident are you when you're walking on stage in an evening gown or swimsuit. Those portions are based on that. Do you walk out and look nervous in your own skin? Or can you walk out with conviction and be like, this is who I am, and I'm owning every bit of it? And to illustrate that point, because there is not enough body size and shape diversity, that is why people still think you're being judged on how tall and slender you are. Right? So, for example, with me, I'm naturally a more petite woman, but I'm only 160 centimeters. I think I just make it at 5'3", like just on a good day. And a lot of the women who participate in this are in excess of 172 centimeters. Now, some of the countries actually enforce height requirements. I couldn't even enter in India, Namibia, some of these countries, because I'm not tall enough. So for someone like me in Australia, there was no height requirement. To see somebody who does not, comply with that supermodel physique and, tiny average size woman still doing her thing and saying, no, I can take up space here. Now, 4 of the countries that I know of have actually removed their height requirement. So now we're going to start seeing more women of average height who are participating. There was a woman in 2013 who was a little bit more she had a different body shape. She was closer to a size 10 to 12, I think. And when she
Which
did
still
it,
is incredibly slim.
Incredible,
Right?
Exactly.
Right.
But for that realm, what you normally see is a size 4
of course. Right.
Now she was a woman who was a healthy, normal, body shape. And then the year that she did it, she was fat shamed in that arena, similar to how I was shamed for being short and bullied relentlessly online because people don't like change. But the year that she did it, after that, more women who were of a different body shape came through. So what I'm saying is you get these people who come through and they show something different. But I think Miss Universe definitely need to embrace that kind of diversity a little bit faster. And we need to see all body types on that runway, because until then, it almost is like, well, we have to look like that to be there.
And it also affects, we have children, and you'll be a mom if you want to one day. And my daughter is 7 years old, and I'm now teaching her that being a certain size doesn't equate to being better than another size. So we say in our household that, we use the term fat because fat is a scientific term, and we say fat is just a thing. It's a thing on our bodies that everyone has to different degrees, and some degrees are more and some degrees are less, but it doesn't mean that equates to you being better or worse or enough or unworthy. And so, I do worry because, and that's another conversation we can have another time. She walks, she says to our nanny, "Oh, you're fat," because she doesn't know that to normal people, the layman is like, well, that's it's not a compliment, which again, shouldn't not be a compliment because it's just a scientific term. So I think she's probably a little confused by that. But yeah, I mean, it's about not saying that fat is a good or a bad term and equating any value to that.
Yeah, and I think for what you've just said about it's not a thing, what I had said the entire time I was, participating, when people would make remarks about my height and tell me that I didn't deserve to be there because of my height or because I didn't look the part or whatever it was. I would say that, beauty and power and your worth and your capability, it's not actually rooted in the number of centimeters you stand tall. That has nothing to do with it. And it's about, what do you have to say? What value are you offering to the world? How are you impacting the world? How are you giving back? Are you being of service? And similar to what you said about weight, none of these things, they're just factors about yourself, not good nor bad. It just is. And I agree. You need to just see that as it is and reflect it in these spaces, even, and not just body shapes and sizes. I'm talking about transgender representation too. We've had one transgender participant who, made waves for that community as well. So I agree. I think it's just acknowledging this is the beautiful, diverse world we live in. Let's see it in all these important spaces. So I agree. I
think it's interesting too, because of all the realms that we work in, a lot of it is based on our image, right? So we are our own brands, So the interesting, or the kind of the problem is, I guess, we are taught, to be this brand when we're on camera and when we're doing these things, we have to get glammed up. We have hair and makeup. We have like dresses. We have all these things for like the external. But when we're doing these jobs and when we're doing all this prep and like looking a certain way, how do you sort of separate that from your self-worth? Like, because it is such an integral part of what we do anyway. And you know what? Hey, it is nice to look pretty. It is nice to get dressed up and wear a pretty dress. And it is nice to like put on some makeup and some high heels and to feel glamorous, but how do we not let that define our worth?
No, I fully know what you mean, because so much of, a lot of the different creative things that I have to do, you look a certain part and whatever it is. I guess one thing I try and do, for me anyway, firstly, it's knowing that what feels glamorous and beautiful to one person is different to somebody else. So it's acknowledging that. But then for me personally, the way I detach from that image, a lot of the work that I'm doing, I really, really, really try and stay conscious of and keeping it at the forefront of my mind. Well, what is the purpose to all of these things that you're trying to do, and focusing on the value? So that, for example, when I came back from Miss Universe, I put on a couple of kilos because you know what, like I worked hard for it, great, but I'm not going to sustain an unsustainable lifestyle. I want to eat. I like to eat. I like to do things. I work out when I want to work out. I don't care. Now, having your body change in a short period of time, there are people online who've made comments and noticed and said things, but it's just reminding them that, my ability to like myself, it doesn't rest in me having perfect hair, in me having a good glam, in me having abs or no abs. It's that's got nothing to do with it. I just fundamentally like who I am. I like the way I treat people. I like what I'm putting out there. And if I feel good about myself, great. And I think everybody should. And you don't necessarily have to put on heels or a dress to do that. But if it makes you feel good, do it. But just know that, I guess, what you're putting out there and how you feel about what you have to offer in this world. And it's not just, I'm not saying you need to go and change the world, but it's how are you treating the people in your life? What are you choosing to be? So those are the sorts of things that I would rather focus on. So when I can't be bothered putting on makeup, or if I just want to look how I want to look, that doesn't fundamentally change how I look at myself. I've started doing this thing where being South Asian, I have very prominent dark eye circles, and it's just genetic. It just is, right? And I used to be literally unable to leave the house without concealer. And I've just said to myself, it's really important to unlearn that sort of negative self-talk and the way that the conditions we put on ourselves to feel good, right? You'll feel good as long as you've got concealer, as long as you do this, so I've started now leaving the house, not wearing any makeup. When I'm on socials, if I'm just at home, just talking on stories, I don't care. I'm going to do it without concealer, without a shred of makeup, because I shouldn't be placing conditions on myself to show up as my happiest, most me self. Do you know what I mean? So it's, I guess, then setting little things like that for yourself and challenging yourself to go outside your comfort zones and break those conditions. Can you still go out and feel good if you put on a bit of weight? Can you still show up and talk to people and meet with people without the makeup? Like, you realize that stuff means nothing. It literally means nothing, So yeah,
it's so ingrained though. Like it's interesting you say that, because yes, it's taken me 20 years to try to unlearn some of the behaviors. It just sometimes, it can run so deep and be so ingrained, like rock in a formation of other rocks, that it's hard to get that self-doubt out, right? And it's hard to start to love yourself. And I've read a lot of books about this, listened to a lot of podcasts. It sounds trite, but it's almost like you have to fake believing in yourself and fake loving yourself and fake affirmations, which again can sound hokey, but they actually aren't. And the more you continue to say, I love myself, even if this, or I appreciate I'm not my past, I'm not my failures, I'm not the trauma, I'm not what's happened to me. The more you continually say those things, your body actually starts to believe it, and you start to go to the positive rather than negative. Because I think Roxy and I have issues, especially being moms. It's like you're always, you always feel like you're failing. And I don't know if it's because of who we are in society as women, and we just get so much thrown at us about being all these different roles to perfection, and we just can't, there's no such thing as perfection. Or if it's, if it's our own selves and like all our trauma coming to the surface about the way we were brought up, because a lot of people, we had great families, Roxy and I, but a lot of people didn't. And they're trying to like unlearn their own trauma from their own families and how they grew up, and now trying to better themselves for the next generation. So I don't know. I think it's hard to love yourself fully. I mean, I guess, Roxy, do you love yourself?
I mean, I think.
Would you love yourself sometimes?
Yeah. Depends.
And does it depend on what's going on? Like if everyone's telling you like, I loved myself during this movie, everyone's like, you're great, you're doing a good job, you're a good actress, you look good, you're cute, you've got family. Like I loved myself. But then the movie finishes and I'm like, what the fuck? Who am I? What is my worth? Like, why am I not good enough? Why don't people call me back? It's like, so maybe do we always love ourselves all the time?
I mean, I don't think so. I think it goes in waves. I know for me, it can be day to day, and it can be, I think there can be factors, right? There's like external factors. It's like, are you getting like, and it shouldn't be to look to external places to get validation, but it certainly helps, right? It certainly helps. Yeah, it certainly helps when external validation is coming my way, and I'm like, oh, that's great, because maybe I didn't believe in myself that day, and I'm getting those positive affirmations from from somebody else. I think too, I know we talk a lot on this podcast about our menstrual cycles, and I know that hormonally, it goes up and down through the month. And I know there's certain points in my menstrual cycle that I feel better about myself than other times, and I think also, this whole crazy pandemic that we're all also going through has a large bearing on my self-worth some of the time, because it's not natural to stay in your house 24/7, and not go to these places. So for me, I'm an extrovert and I like being out and I like
No.
I know. No, you would have never.
You are.
Yes, I know. It's weird. But I miss miss being around people and miss meeting people, and like even Tammin, I haven't wrapped my arms around in so long.
I've not humped your leg, Roxy. I have not humped your leg.
It's just
I agree.
Crazy, right?
So
I agree.
I had three thoughts just then when you were chatting about, a couple of these different, you brought up some brilliant points, Tammin, because I was thinking, firstly, you mentioned as women, we have so many things thrown at us and we're constantly told you need to be this, but then if you're not jumping through this hoop, you need to jump through that hoop, and people are constantly changing their mind about what is good enough, and you'll never please everybody. And I think as a mum or a parent, you are all the more under that microscope. So it's being aware of the context that we live in, because I really think that, especially with social media, you're never going to please everybody. You're exposed to a world of opinions. But then I think, when you asked about, you mentioned self-love, do we ever really love ourselves? And you talked about how unlearning these thoughts, it's like a rock formation you're trying to get out of yourself. I really think, firstly, it really helps to redefine what does loving yourself mean, because we often talk about self-love journey or my fitness journey, and we talk about these things as if it's a destination we need to get to. But what if, you're right, like societal conditioning is so deeply ingrained, it is so hard to unlearn it. It took me 28 years to realize I don't have to be ashamed of the fact that I'm South Asian in Australia. And there are still times where I'll go out and little things might happen that trigger me, and my mind reverts to these old thoughts, because like you said, it's that little rock formation. But what if we aspire to not judge ourselves by how quickly can we get the rock formation out, and rather we aspire to be in more of an enlightened, conscious state where we can catch ourselves reverting into these old thought patterns, and we can see, okay, I've just had that thought, and then we can refute it to ourselves. We can interrupt our own negative self-talk, our own internal monologues that tell us we're not good enough, that we were not born with. We inherited those monologues. And instead of thinking, I'm never allowed to have a thought like that again, and that is when I will love myself. Loving yourself is I am able to catch myself when I fall back into these patterns, and I interrupt them each
See,
time.
we got to kill the ants, the automatic negative thoughts, right?
Isn't that what the doctor?
Yes.
Dr. Aman said? Is that what he said? Automatic negative thoughts.
The ants.
But they're hard to. You can't get rid of them. But it's just deal with them as they come.
As they come.
I think it's also what your family based value on, whether it was education or looks or marrying a man or money, whatever it was, whatever they valued their worth on as themselves and also for you, that's what you base your value on. So if you're not educated enough and your family really wanted education, or you're not a doctor and you became a model, whatever it is, or if if your mom was into looking a certain way and your hair is short now because your mom liked long hair, whatever it is, it's like those patterns that we have learned from, when you're a kid, your frontal lobe doesn't actually fully develop until you're 25 years old. So they say 7 is actually when your kids are getting the most information and when they're actually being formed as humans. And so every single thing you tell your child starting from 7 years old is really going to shape them as people, or they're going to have to go through a lot of therapy and try to unlearn all that upbringing. And a lot of people aren't able to do that. Like we're very lucky that we are able to go seek help if we're having issues, or do have good, like the 3 of us do have good families. But some people come from very abusive backgrounds or financially are not able to do that. And so it can be a really hard thing to unlearn, And so my goal for this show is like, whoever listens to this, like, you can also find your own information online or through podcasts, or search for answers, search for answers on how to feel better. Because I think sometimes it's not something that comes natural to a lot of us.
Yes. Oh my God. That is like an eye opener that you said the 7-year-old, because our daughters are 7 right now.
I know now it's like, and my daughter will hit herself when she gets something wrong. And I'm like, oh God, I'm like, not like violently, but she'll just like smack her arm. She'll be like, stupid Phoenix. And I'm like, whoa, is that me? Is it the world? Is it the environment? Like, am I failing her? Or is it the fact that I'm so hard on myself that she's watching that behavior? And it's like every time we even look in the mirror, like as moms, like you have to be very careful of like what you say to yourself in front of your children. If you're looking in the mirror and going, oh, I look so fat today, or oh, I look shit in this outfit, or whatever you say to your husband, you don't know what you're talking about, I look like crap, whatever you're saying,
they're absorbing.
These children are absorbing, and they definitely are taking in everything that you're putting out. So you just have to be so careful, because then they're the next generation, right? If we're like, why is the world turning to shit? It's becoming because of the parenting. You know what I mean? Like each person that like pops out a good kid is going to make the next generation better, and hopefully they'll learn from their mistakes and make it even better. You don't want to go backwards.
Yeah,
it does become their self-talk. They inherit it, and you know what? I don't have kids, but I'm trying so hard to be conscious of this. For the last few years, it's been something that you look in the mirror and you think, God, like I look like hell today, or whatever. But it's not doing that, because you'd never say that to somebody you loved. You never walk up to your best mate and say like, I agree. I think we need to. That's something to be conscious of.
You wouldn't say it to your best mate, but you maybe say it to your husband. You look like
your husband. Like, I have to be so careful sometimes. I would never say that to you. I would never say it to my friends.
Yeah, but it's even road raging. It's like in the car. Like, how do you respond to frustrations? It's all you are. Everything you do, they're going to be your little mirror.
My daughter says swear words in the car, because I only. That's not true. I do swear when I'm not near her. But when I'm in the car, I'm like, you mother effer. And then I forget she's in the car. And then now when I like, when the car is going, if someone like cuts me off, she yells, "You mother effer!" And I'm like, oh my goodness, I am in so much trouble. But again, it's just, it came out because I felt like someone was trying to be rude.
Yeah.
You would never say that in an elevator. You know what I mean? So if you're not going to say it in an elevator, why would you say it in the car?
But you know what else? I feel like this is maybe me speaking completely out of my depth here because I'm not a parent, but I have, friends who are parents, and it's really interesting to see different attitudes to parenting, where some of them are so relaxed and they'll happily, they'll swear in front of their kids or talk to their kids like they're adults, but say, you have a choice, and they take a different approach to raising humans who can make good choices. And then I have, friends who are a little bit more worried about, okay, I will not swear in front of them. I won't do this, that, or the other. Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, it's coming back to what you said about, I constantly feel like I'm failing. You can define what good parenting looks like to you, because you know what? Somewhere in the world, there's going to be someone who thinks you're completely stuffing it up. And that could be said for anything in life. I mean, what is success to you? What's happiness to you? What's a good relationship to you? To some people, that might be ending up in a really happy marriage. To others, it's, you know what? We have a good life. We don't need to do that. And it works. And I feel like in the world that we live in, people are so polarized in their opinions about things, about what is healthy, what's not, what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad, when a lot of these things are nuanced. And
oh my goodness, it's all shades of gray. And I feel like kids, to be honest, like if I just want my child to know that I'm fallible and that I'm not perfect, because I think when we are raised, we think our parents are God. We just do. And we think they know all the answers, and we think that they don't make mistakes. So my biggest thing with my daughter is when I do fail and when I do make a mistake, I sit down with her and I said, you know what? I shouldn't have done that. I was struggling with something, and that had nothing to do with you. Because I feel like if our parents always said that to us, we would go, oh my goodness, we don't have to put them on the pedestal. They are just as damaged as we are. Everyone's just fighting their own battle, and they're trying to be the best person that they can be. And I feel like when children see that, they understand more about why they got yelled at, or why everything was so stressful, or why they kind of were sucked into something that was never about them. Because when I'm stressed, I get yelly. And so now she knows that it's not about her, and it's not her fault, and she doesn't need to feel bad. It's the fact that I was struggling, and so I put that on her. So I think it's important for us to explain to our children when we fail.
100%. It is really important. Because you know what? I think there was a period in my life where I felt at times disappointed by my parents growing up. And everyone's parents have their things that they're dealing with, whatever it is. I used to, like you said, put them on a pedestal. And I think it wasn't until my mid-20s that I thought, you know what, they were just human beings doing the best that they could. Like me, they had struggles, and they had, maybe unresolved traumas that they needed to heal that they couldn't. But because we grow up thinking, and I think in South Asian communities, there's this emphasis on hierarchy in families where it's like, grandparents, then parents, and then kids need to be really respectful and respect your elders at all
and
costs
live for your elders. Really, you're supposed to really live for them. But I think I wish I had conversations like that, because that would let me know as well, hang on, if I fail, it's not a reflection of me as a person. I just couldn't do this, or maybe this didn't work out for me. And I think that's such a healthy dialogue to model with your kids. And I kind of wish, God bless my parents, but it did make me a bit of a perfectionist, because they held themselves to super high standards. And then when things would mess up, I used to be frustrated because I had these expectations of, you're the parent, you can't stuff up. So then there was disappointment. That's an unrealistic model to have in your head that's just going to breed a world of negative emotions. So I think that's a brilliant point to make. And that's something I would try and be conscious of if I choose to have kids one day. And, just going on these like sort of negative thoughts and things, I wanted to ask you both about imposter syndrome. Because I feel like I've had it. Definitely. Right? We've all had it. And it's one of those things. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it isn't. It's like with different milestones, it's like, even actually, funnily enough, it's like when good things happen, it's that's when it creeps back in, right? And it's like, oh my God, like I'm not supposed to be here. I'm an imposter. Like, what am I doing here? You know,
But you know what,
Yeah.
Roxy,
Not-
everyone's an imposter.
you think?
I
You
think
think
so.
everyone's
I think
really
everyone's faking it until they make it. I feel like no one really I mean, we all think that we know what happens when we die. I mean, no one's died and come back and said, you know what, this is exactly what it looks like.
Yeah.
I mean, like we're all just trying to figure it out. And
Yeah.
I feel like everyone, I mean, some people might have more education or might have more experience, but I feel like everyone feels like they're an imposter and they're all just faking it. I think we're just better at faking it. Some people.
Do you know though, when we talked about, I think the only thing that is, and this is when we talked about opinions as well, and people, you know, no nuances, there's no room for nuances and things like that. I just feel like the only thing that is ever certain is that everything and most things are uncertain. And when it comes to imposter syndrome, you know, particularly for minorities, not just people of color, I mean, people from the LGBTIQ plus community, people with disabilities, people of alternative gender identities, you know, it is so much stronger because it's not just like you are all of a sudden maybe scared of stepping into a new level of success or a new situation and you don't know what to do. You actually really haven't seen it done before by many people in your community because that opportunity hasn't been there. So therefore, it's not even just imposter syndrome, it's I have not seen it done and I have not even thought it's possible for me. So like, I know I've had it a lot and I'm still unlearning it to the point where I had really bad crippling social anxiety when things started to go right for me in 2019. Before Miss Universe, before any of that, I did my first modeling job in 2019. And I was so sick with anxiety before it that I had to pull over in the car on the way there and I had a pit in my stomach and had to, okay, just breathe. Because I thought, why have they chosen me? Why me? Because again, deviate from the norm a little bit in terms of what I thought I would need to be in these spaces. And I thought, why I don't deserve to be there. So it's an active thing, but I faked it and no one that day would have known when I walked onto set because I was wanting to cry inside, but I walked on, hi, how are you? And I'm like, just get through the first half an hour, get through the second half an hour. And like Tammin said, you just fake it till, you know, and now I'm getting better at not having that sense of you don't deserve to be there. But when it does creep up, I do unlearn that. And you know what? Sometimes it's not even your internal voice. I remember right after I became Miss Australia, I got my first big ambassadorship. I was a Piper Hide-Seek ambassador for the Australian Open. And it was pretty new to that world and things like that. And I was at this event with a number of people in the, you know, influencer space who had been going to these things for a long time or whatever it was. And a woman walked up to me and said, oh, I haven't really seen you at a lot of these things before. Who are you? You're new. And I was the ambassador for the whole thing. And I remember, my goodness, that was my internal dialogue. It was, you're new, you've never been here before, you don't deserve to be here. I am so proud of myself for unlearning this. I literally took everything I had in me to be like, I'm Miss Universe Australia, I am new, but you'll be seeing me a lot more of these, you know. And it's like, back yourself, don't let other people talk down to you. And for me to get to that point and to not just shrink under what was said, I needed to not do that to myself. And sometimes you need to actively, you know, that was about a year ago. And you just get better at it every time you do it.
Yeah, you got to tuck yourself off the ledge almost, you know?
Yeah. Sometimes it's
Roxy's
like,
holding me while I'm on the ledge. Going, do it.
I don't want to
do it.
Yeah.
It is reassuring to know, though, that everybody goes through it, you know, no matter what level, what's, you know, what place you're at.
I don't know. I mean, maybe they don't. I just have a feeling that, you know, my husband always used to say, fake it till you make it, fake it till you make it, fake it till you make it. And I also, you know, we talk about a lot about manifestation. I say that to you, Roxy, a lot. It's just manifest and believe it's happening to you, and then it ends up happening. I mean, my whole life has changed within the last 10 months because I just believed, I was like, I'm going to work in Australia. I'm going to do TV shows and movies. It's been a while. I've been in the States acting for 15 years. I haven't been in Australia doing anything recently. And I'm like, I'm just going to do it. Next week, I got a call from an agent. Within 3 months' time, I'm here in Australia shooting a movie. And then I started a TV show in 2 months' time. It's like, it's not I don't know if it's, people say, well, is it so easy? It's like magic. And I'm like, well, it's not magic, but isn't the whole universe magic as such? Like, don't we really don't know where things end and where things begin, and how, you know, from nothing becomes a baby in your stomach and then becomes a little girl who's like defying me every time she walks outside, who has opinions. Like, isn't it all magic? Isn't like color magic and butterflies magic, and the fact your hair grows and your eyes see? Like, so if that's, because we just believe it is because we're just so used to it. We're like, of course we can see, and of course, you know, of course blue is blue. But what is blue? You know, you have a little child saying like, what is the sky? What? And I'm like, I fucking don't know what the sky is. Excuse my French. He's like, well, tell me how. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know the answers. So if we don't know the answers to like, how is a baby come from nothing to something, like to something? Like I sent a picture to my husband of our first sonogram of the baby, and it was just a little egg. It was just a little egg. And he said, looks exactly like her. But my whole point was, she came from an egg to a little human being. So that's magic. So why can't we believe that we can create our reality? Why can't we believe that we create our financial situation? And like, for all the people who are thinking that it's not possible, they're sitting on the couch going, I can't lose weight and make myself healthier. Or I can't be in a pageant, or I can't, you know, be the next CEO and make a lot of money and buy a house. Well, then you can't. Because you've already limited yourself, right? But what if you try actually doing it and seeing what happens? What's the worst that can happen? You don't get it anyway? Well, at least you tried. It's better to try than not. But imagine if it does. Imagine you do. My friend says, I'm not going to find another husband. And I'm like, that's because you have no energy out there. The universe does give you what you're asking for. And if you're closed off, you're not going to get someone walking into your life that knows that you're wanting to be with someone. I mean, you guys know, when we wanted boyfriends or husbands, we were out for the prowl. We were putting the energy out that like we wanted to meet someone, and we met someone. And we, when I wanted to have a kid, I was like, I put all that energy into that. And out of nowhere, Lennon was a miracle baby after lots of miscarriages. I believed I could see her in my brain. I could visualize her, and she came to be. So I know that was a little bit of a 10-minute rant, but I don't believe, like, people say, is manifestation magic? I'm like, isn't it fucking all magic?
But you know what people, no, you go, Roxanne.
No, I was just going to say, you know what? People are paralyzed by rejection. You know, the fear of the no. That's why a lot of people don't get up off the couch. It's like they're already thinking of the worst case scenario, right? So it's what
is the worst case? That you're exactly where you are, right? You just don't move forward.
Right. And then, they'll get a no, or they'll get like a rejection, or like it won't be what they thought it was going to be, or it could take them on a totally different, new and beautiful direction. You know, it's like
they say,
the fear of not knowing. You know, it's like all these different factors like weigh into somebody. I think not being proactive about it or not manifesting.
Yeah, you say that about money too, and your relationship with money, and they say there is a scientific reason why, like, universally, why all of a sudden you just don't make money. And some people you see billionaires, right? Or millionaires, they make money, then they lose it, then they make it again, because their belief is money will come in. Their belief is they're not sitting here on their money stash going, oh my goodness, I can't spend anything. I'm not saying waste all your money. I'm not saying like go buy 10 pairs of shoes that you don't need. That's frivolous. But if you don't believe that money will continue to come, then it just doesn't. There's a blockage. And you will notice that people who make money seem to always continue to make money, even when they go through bad times. They always seem for money to come in. Then there are people who just don't. And I think it's because of your relationship with it.
But you know, when people talk about magic, I think, and is this magic, is this not? It's what is your definition of magic? Because if you're thinking of it in terms of like Dumbledore and Harry Potter, like, of course, like, it's, you know, no one's saying it's that. And it's, when we talk about manifestation, I think a lot of people, it's not even just fear of the no. I think a lot of people want hard, concrete, scientific evidence. Prove to me it works, right? But, you know, 30 years ago, there were many things that we know now that we didn't know then. And I think when you think of the world, and this is for anyone who's curious about this sort of thing, if you read Dr. Joe Dispenza, he is one of my favorite educators on this topic. Dr. Joe Dispenza talks often about manifestation from neuroscience, epigenetics, and also quantum physics. And he talks about the world in terms of energy. And when you think of the world in terms of energy, you will understand how thoughts, actions, feelings, all of that is interlinked and how it influences each other. So, the way that you think about yourself, I can't make money. And I've recently started doing this in my own life, to manifest financial abundance, to manifest opportunity. The thoughts that you think, they carry a frequency, and that creates an electromagnetic field around you that will attract like people, experience, opportunities and things. And if you're telling yourself, no, I'm closed off, then there's a part of your brain where it's called the reticular activating system. You tell yourself, I will never make money and I just have to hold on to every dollar. It primes your mind to see the world that way. And all of a sudden, that which you've now made personally significant to you, your inability to manifest cash and make money, that is how the world will respond, because that's how your brain's going to filter it. So
Absolutely.
the way that you think, it carries a tangible frequency, but also you are creating a filter with which your mind is going to view the world. So it does matter. It absolutely does. I love this conversation. I could talk about it forever.
I only started manifesting since October, and my whole life has changed.
Right?
My entire life has changed.
My life has changed. Yeah.
Everything that I've wanted and asked for has come. Not only has it come, it's come in abundance. And
okay, Tammin, you have to tell everybody how you started doing it. What was the first step?
Well, I mean, look, I did unfortunately do the cheesy thing where I read a lot of books on manifestation, and one of them was The Secret. And what they say in The Secret is, whatever it is in your life, for me, it was, I wanted to figure out my career. And I was in a situation like a rut with my career. I just had a baby, and yes, COVID, the pandemic had just hit. So I was in a rut, and I wanted abundance when it came to my career. It wasn't necessarily financial abundance, but that does come hand in hand. So for me, I wrote out exactly what I wanted. I put it on the roof of my bedroom, and every single morning I would wake up and I would say, I am going to have the career of my dreams. I'm going to be able to work again. I'm going to work in Australia and the US. And I just said it every day. And I, even when I didn't believe it, the more repetition your brain does with the same over and over affirmations, sentences, manifestation, you start to believe it. You start to believe something that might be unbelievable to you at that time. And when it says, when we talk about manifestation, they say that it's not like the phone's going to ring and say, here's the next Thor movie, you're the next lead, but it's going to open up opportunities for you to be able to move in that next in the next step in the direction of what you want. And for me, it was like I was getting more opportunities auditioning, and those auditions were then ending up, I was doing a good job and I was ending up getting the roles. So it's just, you start to get more opportunities, and then it's whatever you do with those opportunities that I believe is how manifestation has worked for me so far.
That's interesting though, because it's like, even in the days you don't believe it, because of course there are going to be days you don't believe it, and you don't feel in tune with it necessarily, but that you just still say it until you believe it.
And you need to visualize. Visualization is such a powerful tool. You actually have to sit there with your eyes shut and actually see yourself, either with the check in your hand or your bank balance. When you look at your bank balance, triple the number and just visualize what that number looks like. If you want to, use Photoshop and actually put the number in there so you can see what that number looks like to you. If it's about having a child, sit there and picture the smell and what they look like and the color of their hair, and really sit with that, smell it, taste it, feel it every single day. And then it starts, I don't know, it's like this, again, when you start talking about frequency, it's like you're vibrating at a different level, and you have a magnetic field. I think that's what you were saying around you, that starts to that's the one. And then things start to change in your life, and I've seen it firsthand. So I know it's to be true. And you know what? It's not on your time frame either. So that's what we have to be careful. It's like, why didn't this happen within a month? Why didn't this happen within 6 months? You will look back if you start to do this practice and realize it did happen, just not in your time frame. But then again, is it ever at that time frame?
And not necessarily in the way that you think either. It depends how specific you are. But also to that point, you can say I think there's a formula to it, and I think it really has to be an alignment of your intention, your energy, and your action, because you can fully believe it and you can have the energy. But if you're not actually taking tangible steps towards this and doing what you can, I think it's almost like waiting for things to land in your lap. It's like, to Taman's point about waiting for opportunity, right? So then you have to do something with it. Similarly, you could, be doing all the actions, but not really believe it's possible for you. And then that shift what you are attracting to you. So I think it's the alignment of all those things. And you're right, it is possible.
Yeah. And I think it's like operating on a higher frequency too, right? It's like trying to get rid of like the low frequency, like the negativity and like the self-doubt and all those things that like kind of build up and like prevent us from having these like higher frequency thoughts and like putting ourselves in those places and taking like the actionable steps, so it's all part of like the process,
And it also has to do with the foods that you eat too, which I think is not manifestation doesn't have to do with the foods you eat, but like vibrating on a different level. I think you need to be eating foods that are at a higher vibration level too, because when you're putting crap in your body, you're going to feel like crap. And when you feel like crap, it's very hard to navigate those toxic thoughts because you don't feel well. So you're doing double the work. So I'm always like, when you're eating well and you're exercising, that definitely helps your mental state. And when it helps your mental state, then you're also vibrating at a different frequency.
Yeah, that's exactly why well, not exactly, but part of the reason why I've started this healthier eating and like trying to exercise every day is like just putting that mindset in like that place,
It's the brain gut connection.
Yeah, it is, right? Right.
Yep.
I just wanted to share on that. Oh, sorry. I just wanted to share one manifestation story. You were talking about this. I remember I was in lockdown the entire time I competed for Miss Universe Australia, but all the other states were not. So I couldn't exercise, get my hair done, nothing. I thought the odds are against me. I'm the shortest one in the batch. It's not going to be me, And I wrote a check to myself addressed as the winner. It was in May. I wrote a check and said, Maria Thattil, Miss Universe Australia, you win the Mind Spec grant. And I just stuck it up on my wall every day that I was in lockdown. And I saw that and I'm like, it'll happen. And I wrote a countdown, 6 weeks till I'm crowned Miss Universe Australia. And I would meditate on it. And I remember there was one meditation, I can't remember when it was, but it felt like my entire body was like, I could feel the energy of me. And I remember getting out of that meditation in tears. I just knew it was going to happen. And it was a few months off from the final, but I'm like, it's going to be me. I'm going to win it.
Like, my goodness, goosebumps.
Well, it works. Yes.
And I kept that little check I wrote to myself and the countdown, and it was just the best.
Roxy's writing a $10 million check to herself right now. As she's sitting here, she's like, fuck it, let's just make it 100 million. 100 million.
No,
I mean, while we're at it, $1 billion. Come on.
Why not? I mean, like, look, I did that last week. I wrote, I'm going to manifest X dollars in jobs. I did that on Sunday last week. On Friday, I got halfway there on Tuesday, and then I didn't hear anything from my agency. And then on the Friday, I booked a job that took it $400 over the limit I set for myself.
I know. Every month I make $5 more than I said I'm going to make.
Right.
So it's like by like $5 to $10 more.
I love it.
It's wild. When I was on Home and Away, I was an extra.
Yeah.
On Home and Away when I was 14. And I said when I was there, I was like, I'm not going to be an extra anymore. I'm going to be on the show. And within 6 months, I got one of the leads on the show.
That's so cool. You're like,
so Roxy's like, why is this not going?
I'm like, I'm going to be sitting in the same place for the next week, just manifesting. I'm like,
Roxy, where are you? She's like, I can't talk right now. I'm manifesting.
I'm writing checks to myself. I'm like,
manifesting. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. We are so grateful and honored to have you here. Your future is extremely bright. You don't need to hear that from us. I think you know that. Yeah. We just love having powerful, empowering women on the show, and we wish you all the best of luck.
Thank you. And thank you for representing the Desi community too, the way you have. That's like very empowering, and it's very much needed, now and today, so thank you for that.
I think it's time for us to see diversity in every way. And why don't we have someone who is in a wheelchair? There should, it doesn't, beauty is in so many different forms, and we need to make sure that we're not just keeping it in one lane.
Yeah,
100%.
Because then we all don't feel like we can see ourselves there.
Absolutely. And that's what I hope. I hope that, just with the Miss Universe campaign and with everything else, it just showed people that it wasn't just representing just the Daisy community, but it was people from culturally, diverse backgrounds. And it's people who didn't look the part necessarily. And it's just telling people who felt like they've been on the fringes, you belong front and center too. So thank you for creating a space for me to share that. Yeah. And for the great manifestation talk, I'm going to go right and watch it for myself. But I'm going to manifest right now. Thanks, guys.
So thank you, guys. And guys, don't forget to rate, subscribe, and comment. We need you all. We're so grateful for each and every one of you. And you can follow us on Women on Top Official on Instagram.
And Women on Top podcast on Facebook, and Women on Top on Clubhouse too, our group. But Maria, where can we find you before we leave? Tell everybody where we can find you.
Absolutely. Well, you can follow me on Maria Thattil on Instagram. I also have a website and a couple of exciting projects in the next 6 to 12 months. So more to come. Watch this space.
Manifestation everywhere.
It's happening.
Well, thank you guys so much. I am Tammin Sursock.
And I am Roxy Manning.
And we are
Women
on Top.